Okay, welcome everybody to the School Safety Subcommittee here on February 3rd, 2021 now. And I will take us through the agenda really quickly. I think I have it here on my screen that I can share. So we have a lot to do today, and I'm hoping that we can keep each one of these brief enough, but they all felt important to put on this week's agenda. We can defer a few if we get too overloaded, but we're welcoming. That's what we're doing now. I just thought just a minute to talk about the listening sessions and to also address the youth subcommittee's status on their listening session and what we need to do because that feedback is coming directly to this subcommittee, so it felt appropriate to put it on this agenda. And then just a quick zoom out, just to make sure we're tackling the issues you hoped we would tackle and see if there's any ways we need to refocus. Then we have a request or just an opportunity out there about commission members stepping up to update council or to talk with council. Thus far, your facilitators have represented you there, and the council has a desire to have a bit more kind of direct communication with commission members, which I think is great. We just need to gauge interest in that. The next step for the MOU, I have an update on that. And then next steps we were offered that opportunity to maybe submit some criteria or measurements of success to the school district, talk about what we want to do there. And then we were also in a meeting with the chief this week, and we got some interesting updates on the data that we were provided. And so want to talk with you all about that. And then we just need to talk about the next meeting agenda. And when we get to the PD item, there's one other kind of sub item I want to talk about tied to members of the department joining us in subcommittee. So, here we go. Listening session debrief. Any overall, I mean, we need to keep this, I'm sure we could talk about it all day long, so we need to keep this agenda item relatively short, but anything you were surprised by, any aha moments, any frustrations, anything that we as facilitators could help you to suss out or to follow up on? Any thoughts? If we don't have any thoughts, then we can keep going. Then maybe we can jump. Go ahead, Moises.
I was just going to say, the funny thing is that we hardly didn't talk anything about racial equity or anything like that, but there was just a general topic. And I like that there was pros and cons. And
so. Yeah, when you're taking callers from the public, you're going to get what you're going to get. But I do think there were several really compelling stories that did come forward in and amongst some others that were more general to policing. But I think overall it was pretty good. I think we probably at some point should gather up some lessons learned and just see if there are things we might do differently because we will do another listening session similar to that around the time that we have some more concrete recommendations to put out to the public to make sure that they feel like the recommendations are reflective of public sentiment. So we don't have a date for that yet, but just at that point in the process, when we feel like we're there, we'll schedule another. So just so you know, so on to youth subcommittee listening session. So the youth subcommittee, and I'm going to speak for you just for a minute and then speak for yourselves. Okay. Just there's a desire to have a general youth listening session, much like the one that was held the other day, probably a bit less formal, I would imagine, but hosted or facilitated by the youth subcommittee for other youth to have a listening session on that topic. And then also 1 or 2 listening sessions for students who have interacted with SROs. There was some desire to have multiple date options so that we would get people to be able to attend because there's different school schedules and things floating around. So right now we had them scheduled, but we didn't have enough time for outreach. So we're going to reschedule them and do some additional outreach. But I wanted to ask Dati and Mater, who I think are our only 2, youth subcommittee here. It sounds like the hope is to have us help a little more to conduct outreach, right? Is that fair? And then to also maybe get some direct links to the survey and to the school safety topic within the website, so people aren't having to look around for that. Or am I understanding the needs of the subcommittee accurately? And is there anything else that you want to share with me or update me on so we can be the most help? I mean, I guess the most guidance I need from you all are date horizons, like times of day. If we want, I mean, because before we had planned Wednesdays at, I think it was 1 or 1:30 we landed on, Dati, right? And if that's not the right time of day for us to be planning on and to put on the calendar, let us know. And then we want to know kind of how far out. Do we want to put it end of February? Do we want to put it out into March? Like, what is going to be the best time to give us enough time to do the outreach and to gather enough students' interest? So you guys can either talk about that on Saturday and get back to me, or if you have that on the tip of your tongue, feel free to share it now. Yeah?
I guess it depends on how many students we're planning to have, or how many students we can have in our meetings.
Mm.
If there's a lower maximum, then maybe we could do it sooner. But if we just want to get as many students as we can, then I think it would be better to wait, maybe even into March.
Okay, so for the general listening session, maybe go into March, but the students who've interacted with SROs, we've just, for those small group listening sessions, we, just for those of us who facilitate such things, we usually put a cap around 15, just because that generates, it gives everybody an opportunity to speak and makes it small enough that people tend to feel more comfortable speaking on a more sensitive topic at that group size. And so the students, the small group listening sessions will be capped at 15. But if there are, so in that case, if you think we need 2, we can do 2. If you think the interest will be great enough, or if we just need 2 different times of day. The one for the general public, that one won't be capped. And so you can just go bananas. That one, that one just, it could be as many people as we can handle. And we'll have to talk offline about the format of that, if we want to do the whole Larry Schooler situation that we did the other day with the call-in and the text and the phone, and that takes a little more coordination and time on everybody's part. Or we also have kind of a Zoom webinar account where, you know, we can keep participants off camera until they're ready to speak. So it's kind of like this, but it just makes sure that everybody who's a non-panelist is off camera until they're recognized by the panel. So that might be a little easier and more dynamic to meet our needs. So those are, so then if you're okay with it, we'll plan the 2 SRO subcommittees, maybe late February, and then the bigger session in March, to give a little more time for outreach. And then is the Wednesday 1 o'clock slot still kind of the best of all worlds because of all the different school situations that people have? Or should we consider different times of day? Anna Pacey's here, and she can maybe, and Kamal could maybe speak to whether their students would be, that was just kind of based on what we know about West and some other schools, and where kids might be free but not on to their like evening activities just yet.
Yeah, I would say I feel like 2 to 3 would be even better, because I think some students, like I would probably still be asleep at like kind of bordering near that time. So I
You would
think
still
2
be
to
asleep
3.
at 1 o'clock?
Well, I like to leave myself time, you know, just in case I want to still be asleep.
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah, and I think because in Salt Lake City School District, in-person learning is starting next week. We'll have to see like how that plays out for student schedules before we decide.
Okay, so
Like,
I guess, go
thing
ahead.
would be, I know that we were talking about getting a direct survey link. When we do the survey, like it'll be for SROs, but is there a way we could distribute that to teachers so that students can anonymously fill out the form? I think that would probably be one of the easiest way to get student feedback, or the most efficient way.
To distribute it to teachers?
or like, or through the Canvas page through the Salt Lake City School District so that all students can take that survey. Like I got a racial equity at West High survey that we're all supposed to take. So something like that or something similar. I don't
Yeah.
know what, yeah.
I mean, I can certainly look into it, but if you, I mean, I feel like you're more connected to the school district than I am, so you might be able to at least tell me the right person to start with, to which tree to bark up, but I'm happy to figure that out and see if we can't chase that up for you.
I think student services is the best area to start with, because they definitely work with SROs in that department.
Okay. We will start when we're ready with that. So did you guys already create, because the survey we have is general. Did you all create a second survey? Or do you want us to create a survey that is specific to SROs? Alternately, we
Yeah.
could, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say that I think probably an SRO specific one would be better. I mean, I'm not a data analyst or anything, so I don't know if I could come up with as well thought out of a survey as you guys could, but I could try to make up a couple of questions if that would be helpful.
Well, I mean, really, the data comes back to this group, right? And so it's whatever we as a subcommittee think will be most useful. And so I do have a lot of practice putting together surveys because I do it a lot for work. But if I suppose I could draft one and circulate it by email and see if this group
Yeah, that'd be
has
great.
other topics or other things that we think would be really useful. Because I know for me, it's always harder to build something from the ground up than to react to something that exists. So when you get to say, oh, they missed something, like that's a lot easier than just creating it from the beginning. So I will commit to putting together how many, so here's a key question. How many questions will people tolerate before they quit?
6. I
6?
feel like
Okay.
6 is max.
You know your audience better than I, and I feel like my threshold's always been 10, and I feel like my patience over the years, just because of the nature of social media, has gotten less and less. I'm like, oh God, 5 questions, geez. And so I think if we'll try and keep it as efficient as possible so we can get participation. Okay. With that, I'm going to move us to the next item, and then anything else with that we can handle offline if you guys are okay with it, just because we have so much to cover today. Okay. And just so you all know, and if you can communicate in your individual circles, I thought the listening session really accomplished a lot of what we hoped it would, but there was an overall feeling of some people, and this is something we anticipated because it's a listening session, and that's hard. It's hard not to respond. It's hard to not be responded to. It's a difficult thing, but you'll just end up talking to one caller the entire night if you respond. And so it's a challenging thing when you're talking about such a big issue like this. And so we are issuing an FAQ, and we are responding to people individually where we can, where we have contact information. So just so you know, we're not leaving that there. We are trying to respond. And I would encourage you all to think about, because we represent you, we're the facilitators, we are not commission members, but you all give a lot of your time already. So how much buy off you want on our responses. There's going to be a lot of them. And so my thought was, we have kind of a spreadsheet going of here's all the feedback we got on Facebook, here's all the feedback we got on this, and it's on the Google Drive. You have access to it right now. And so I might just kind of keep the responses there and then encourage you to look at them and say, like, am I okay with the tone of these? Am I okay with how I'm being represented? Because it feels like a little bit of an awkward thing to ask you all about. Okay, we're going to respond to person A. What do you think of the response? Okay, we're going to respond to person B. What do you think of the response? That's adding a lot more email traffic to what already exists, but it also feels very odd as your representative to just respond without any input from the group. So any thoughts on how we might do that in a way that feels good to you? My spreadsheet idea is the best I could do. I just said, we can put it out there and kind of show you question, response, and you can feel free to jump in and just say some of this, I don't like the tone of this or whatever, and we can shift gears. Kamal, you just came on camera. I don't know if that's just because you just arrived or if you have a thought.
No, I was moving from my car to.
Gotcha. Okay, you just popped on after I asked a question, so I thought maybe it was Hey, I have an answer. Okay. All right. Well, I'll marinate on that. And if you have thoughts, please do reach out, because we will respond, because we want to be responsive to the community, but I don't want to just do that unilaterally without your buy off. So think about that, and then I will tell you what the next thing on the agenda is. The next is, how are we doing? Are we tackling the things we want to tackle? And so we talked about this a little bit last time, and just for those who weren't here with us, we talked about, hey, we've really got our arms around the SRO thing to some good degree. We're on a good path with that, but we need to refocus on admin and juvenile justice a little more, like the on-ramps to the SRO program. Are there other areas when we talk about school safety generally, how are we doing? Or is this what you expected? Do we want to focus our energies differently within the subcommittee? I just want to do a quick process check. How's everybody feeling?
I feel like we've kind of hit a roadblock with the district and getting some information about SROs, and I had would hit a I'm not sure what we can do to.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Nicole. Your mic is just not
Yes,
doing the trick tonight. So maybe you can chat us that and I can read it out, or it might just be the best. But it sounded like the data that's coming in from the school district leaves something to be desired. So we can talk about different ways to get our arms around that data. Anything else? Any other, like, when you think about kind of what we've tackled so far, do you feel like we're on a good track, or do we need bigger hammers? Do we need to be, focusing more broadly? Because we are talking about a lot of policy issues and, fixing things. We have left, getting rid of SROs altogether. We've left that on the table, but we haven't yet gone towards that direction. So I just want to make sure everybody feels like we're barking up all the right trees.
I've always wanted to know what's beyond SROs when it comes to school safety. So I don't know if they still do, but I know some schools used to also have security. And for me, those are the ones that I was worried about much more than PD. West used to have them, and I want to say maybe another one or two high schools, but for sure West used to have them. And they may have changed their name to, instead of security, to youth advocates or something positive like that, but they're basically still security. So I'd like to know if they have if the school district has other kinds of security in place that we haven't looked at. Because for me, that's more concerning for me. You think PD hasn't had enough training. You go to some of these security services, that's for me trouble.
Do we have any direct knowledge whether those actually still exist? Does anybody know that for sure, or just a thing we want to know about?
Yeah,
I'm just
I would like to
checking
know
the knowledge of the group. Do we know about those? Okay.
I can only speak to West High, and for the last 2 years I've not heard any such.
Okay. Well, we'll put that on the list to check into. Dati, you unmuted.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, like, I go to West every year and they don't have them anymore. They only have 2 SROs at our school.
Okay, but still, let's make sure that that's still there. Any other things?
Any other type of, what does that mean, school safety? So yeah, for us to broaden, and therefore if we can identify what that is, then maybe we could ask questions and broaden it. With the understanding is that, again, we are focused on police, so
Well, yeah, but it's good. It's a good knowledge, because one of the things that we learned in one of the interviews, or one of the things we were reading, was that if you get rid of SROs, some might hire private, like it may just shift. It may just go from PD to some other private system that they hire or something like that. So we could be replacing one problem with another inadvertently.
Yeah. And that's always an issue up at the state capitol. There's a legislator up there that owns a huge security company that they're always trying to do that. So again, it's
so they may see that as an opportunity rather than the
Yeah,
message we're trying to send.
they are pushing towards that. Yeah,
Okay, good to know.
but
Any-
just to know. Mhm.
Any other thoughts on, are we focusing on the issues and topics that we hoped to?
So I'm not sure if it's the links directly, but we do have a hotline in the school district, the Safe Utah. What is it called? Where you
Safe
can,
UT? Is
Safe
it
UT?
safe?
yes,
Hmm.
where you can report, any cases of abuse, mostly bullying and everything. But I'm just wondering if there's any data collected at the other end to see if any of those calls and everything converts into any kind of criminal charges or, pursuer of those complaints. And if there's a way to see if it has any racial disparity or not.
So the data from the Safe UT, and can somebody just give me a 2-second explanation on the goals of that Safe UT? Like, what is it meant set up for?
It's an anonymous way to report bullying and related issues.
Okay.
And it was mandated by the state legislature.
It reports to the PD though, that's your understanding, that's who gets those reports, or to the school district, or?
I know admin gets it. So whenever someone sits from like our school, like that automatically goes to email. So, but I don't know who all gets it.
Okay, well, that'd be good to investigate, good to know. Okay. All the other muted mics I'm gonna take
Oh,
as
good.
Another sub-part of the SRO discussion was the, and I'm pretty sure Nicole is on top of that, the, what's it called, the bill that, okay, my words are getting mixed up. The representative is running to renew the SRO agreement with ACLU.
Mm,
Has anybody seen the draft of that?
I haven't, but
Okay,
it
so
could, is it in, did you notice, was it in the email that Coletta sent out of all the bills that the city is helping us to monitor? There were a lot.
actually,
I've not been through the whole thing.
it's actually not a bill. She's running it as a, what's it called? Give me one. I have notes everywhere. Nicole, help me out with the word here when you run it as a, not as a bill, but as a, the one that we are also doing to abolish the slavery. What's it called? I can't hear you.
Resolution.
Resolution?
Resolution. Yes. So Representative, not Angela Romero, the other one is running a resolution on the SRO bill for the renewal of it. And I'm also wondering if we have looked at the ACLU agreement, reviewed as to what did it ask the school district to do in terms of SROs.
I don't remember seeing an ACLU MOU. We've spent a lot of time with the school district and police department MOU. This ACLU one feels new to me. Anyone else?
No, all I know is that when we did it with Salt Lake City and Salt Lake PD, Salt Lake City School District and PD, ACLU was part of that. But I haven't seen one separate where it's ACLU at the state level. I have not seen that, but that'd be really interesting. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, if that's a separate document, Luna, from the one that we have talked about in this group, the school district and police department MOU, that's the one we focused our energy on. If there's a separate one, or if there's legislation tied to that running, I think that'd be very good information for this group. Do you feel like you have the resources to chase that up a little bit, Luna, and get back to us, or do you want us to ask the city to help?
No, I actually got it directly from ACLU some time ago. I just have to go into my email data and find it, and it may be the same one, but I believe they're the one who actually went into litigation and then settled on the MOU outside court. So that's the document that I am talking about.
Okay, yeah, if you can forward that to us when you find it in your email, I think that'd be really useful to just to make sure we're focusing on the right one. I will, unless somebody else has big things that we need to shift for, I'm going to keep moving us through the agenda to see if we can't get to everything. And in fact, I'm going to take one out of order because it is related to the topic we're talking about. One of our draft recommendations that we presented to council and to the full commission was to extend or begin negotiating that MOU anew because it expires February. And I spoke with Chief of Staff Rachel Otto today and just to check on that. And she said they are going to extend the current MOU, or they've put in a request to extend the current MOU until our work is done, so that any negotiations to renew it, if that's what they decide to do, will be considerate of our recommendations. So that is the current status of that MOU. They're just going to extend it until our work is done, so that they're not going to go into negotiating a new one before our recommendations are complete, which is nice.
Good to hear.
Yeah. So that's really good. So they'll leave the door open for that. And so we will keep going down that road. Next up is the updating of council. So for those who joined us a little bit late, your facilitators have been your representatives to the city council thus far. We've just kind of updated them on process and where we're at with the different commissions and subcommittees. But I mean, we're your representatives, but we are not you. And so they've expressed a desire to have more of a dialogue with the commission members. And so we talked about this at full commission, and there was not a whole lot of hands went up. And so I guess in this less formal setting, I would ask, like, is it just that doesn't interest you? Is it that going in front of the council feels nerve-wracking, or you're not sure what you would say? Or tell me what your thoughts are on that.
Mine is timing. I often have meetings those Tuesday afternoons, and so it's difficult. That's my biggest issue.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it is in the middle of the workday. The work session typically starts like 2-ish and goes to like 5, like, and beyond. So
right, and I have a 4 p.m. standing every Tuesday, and I need about 30 minutes to prep for it. So that's where I run into an issue with being able to do that. So if I skip that meeting, then I could.
Yeah. So I guess to that end, we're always happy, like, if you want to write something or, write an email, we're happy to represent you directly there, or have one of your cohorts represent you there. I can't move council, unfortunately, much as I would like to on some days. Just shift it. They don't let me do that. So any other concerns? Is it, I mean, because I do think at the end of the day, they are between the mayor and the council, they are the ones that are going to push 90% of our recommendations forward or not. And so helping them to understand the discussions that happen here, or the genesis behind these conversations, I think will be really good. And I think I'm looking at youth subcommittee right now too. I think that you guys are really powerful, and they would love to hear from you and some of the things that you're doing. I mean, I'm thinking particularly about, the desire of the youth subcommittee to have your own set of recommendations at the end of the day, and how you landed on that. And just, and because there are things that they can do more with, right? If there's a recommendation formulated a particular way that they can just grab and turn into policy, then that's different than something that's a little more just broad. And so I wonder if a conversation about something like that, like, what type, how can we formulate our recommendations so they're most like grabbable, like implementable, or I don't know, I'm brainstorming here on your behalf because nobody else is talking, and we all know I'll fill in every blank when it's quiet.
To me, I'm just really waiting on data. Like, hopefully we're able to get data from the Salt Lake City School District, right, with referrals. To just more data from listening sessions. To me, it would be great it'd be great to hear from SROs. Like, it'd be really great to hear what their expectations are, what those requirements are, like just straight from them within Salt Lake City School District. Because I work for that school district, but I'm just curious how in line they are with what's considered standard with the other school districts I've been in line with. So I definitely have questions for them.
Okay.
On expectation, on just things along the line.
Okay, so I guess what I'm hearing for you is you'd be willing to go in front of the council, but you want to wait until you have something meatier to talk to them about, something database, something more technical. Okay. All right.
Can we use the council as a means of getting that data that we need?
Yes, but I guess I'm going to unless anybody has any other thoughts about going in front of the council, I'm going to ask, because we had a meeting with the chief this past week that was sort of illustrated something for me on this topic. So we met with the chief because, everybody presented their draft recommendations, and the administration just had questions like, well, what about this one? And talk to us about this. And they had questions about what they all meant and what the genesis of them were. So we met with them last week, and they asked me about our recommendation about the disparity that we're seeing in the data, the remaining disparity, and the fact that they can't disaggregate the Hispanic population very well. And they don't think that that's true. They think that the data exists, and that there's so many different ways to ask for that data out of their system that we may not just be asking the computer the right question. And so they said, come meet with our data analyst and make sure we're like asking for the right things, because they're pretty sure that data exists within their system. So I guess I'm wondering,
that's with the chief though, right?
right. But I guess I'm wondering is if we should look at setting up something similar with the school district before because I do think the council would help us with that. And I do think we could ask for kind of some additional help from the city to get what data we need. But I wonder if that would be an interim step to just go and meet with those who crunch the numbers and ask what we really want to know, rather than going through intermediaries, and they may not be entirely understanding what it is we're trying to get at. And so I wonder if that direct communication might just help in both cases.
I have a question. Is this something we should probably present to the Salt Lake City School District Board within their board of requesting that data? Because then to me, it seems like it's on record. It seems like I don't see why we don't get that data then.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think, Dati? You go to a lot of those meetings. Does that feel like an appropriate thing for us to ask for a minute with the board and ask that question publicly?
Yeah, I mean, I know that they save the meeting minutes, and that's like a really huge thing for their accountability, but I'm sure I could ask one of the board members to get it on the agenda. I was also going to say that
I can do that.
Moises. Oh, perfect. Yeah, I was going to say that Moises and I, didn't we meet with, I can't remember, she's like the head of equity for the Salt Lake City School District. We met
Dr.
with her and
Buendia?
asked her, yeah, Dr. Buendia, and we asked her about the data that she has, and she kind of narrowed it down to what kind of data she has and where it is. So we kind of have that a little bit of a narrower viewpoint, but I have it written down somewhere. I can find it. But if you want to put it on the agenda, I think that, Ms. Salazar Hall, if you could push that up, that'd be great. And then you guys can come in for public comment or be invited in for that portion.
Okay. Awesome. So that's the direction we'll go with the school district. I wonder if somebody would be willing to help meet with the data analyst at the PD, somebody who understands the data we're looking at and what we really want to drive at. I feel like I didn't. Moises, I hear you.
Yeah, I work with their analysts all the time, so and a lot of times they don't know how to get that. Sometimes they're great, but sometimes
when they look at the report that they provided, they see the word Hispanic on it and they just say, well, it's there, it's right there. And so you have to get more granular with them and help them to understand what it is we're missing. So if you're willing to do that, I'm happy to come along, or if somebody else wants to be a part of that conversation. Is there time, date, like that are better that I could throw out there for them?
No.
Just whenever?
No, it just depends. I don't know if we'd be able to.
I'll just copy you.
If you could connect me, or if we connect each other, and then we could figure it out real quick.
I'll copy you because it's Assistant Chief Doubt.
Doubt, Tim Doubt,
He made the offer, and so he said just go through me, and so I'll copy you on an email, and hopefully then he'll connect us to the data analyst and figure out dates. Okay.
Yeah. Perfect.
Great. So
as far as the council, city council, I'm the same with Kamal. I don't feel I have, and you said it too, Shaban. It's to have the kind of a good information to provide. Right now, I feel we're just kind of nebulous right now. We're trying to get a little bit more solidified, but a little bit more nebulous. But I think they also wanted two things. One, for us to give, an update, but also they just want to know us.
Yes.
So
that's what I was.
I'd be willing to do that too. you know, as long as there's not a slew full of us. And so, so I encourage all of us to go, you know, a few here, a few there, just to tell them who you are, what you work, and build those relationships so you feel more comfortable. So I'm
Yeah.
definitely on that.
Okay, so maybe, yeah, it does not have to be exactly, it doesn't have to be something substantive. It could just be, hey, you know, my name's Luna Banuri and here's my interest in this work, although they know you through your other work, I am sure, with the city, but you know, just introduce yourself and here's why I'm interested in this topic and here's what's driven me to get involved in this particular subcommittee. So I do think that relationship building will pay dividends at the end when we're trying to ask them to move these things forward. So
I think so.
okay, cool. And we won't leave you out there by yourselves if you want facilitator support at those, or if you want us to like sit there with you. If you, I mean, I've sat in front of that council enough times that it doesn't freak me out anymore, but it did the first couple times I went for them. So, because it's a very formal type thing. Although right now it's just another
Really?
Zoom meeting. Yeah. When you sit at the big table with the mic, it feels like you should have something really important to say when you sit in front of them.
What's up? You don't say that?
I mean, I do. That's usually my greeting for them. Okay, next, go ahead.
Just know that I found the 3 documents that I was referring to.
Wonderful.
Should I email those to you?
Yeah, just email them. I sent an email to the group with the Zoom link just now, so it should be close to the top. So if you just reply to that group, that'll get it to us. And to a bunch of staff members, but they're copied on everything, so they've got to be used to that way.
I have another meeting to head to, so I apologize for coming late. I apologize for leaving early, just a busy day.
I understand a busy day. Thanks for joining us for the time you are able. Come on.
See you later, man.
Okay. Next up is the next steps for the criteria. So when Moises, you and Dati and I was kind of hanging in the background on that meeting with Dr. Buendia, she indicated that she would be open to our thoughts on how to measure the MOU, the SRO program. So they hadn't yet come up with criteria and they were working on that, but they said, you know, gosh, you guys are spending so much time thinking about this and dedicating this much energy to it. Give us some, we're happy to take some thoughts. So do we want to take that opportunity? And if so, how do we want to formulate those as a group?
Yeah, I think that would be one of the biggest benefits we could provide, recommendation that we could provide for that group. And, you know, like that, we can actually say, hey, are we achieving our goals? Yes on this, no on that. And we could then move forward. And to provide that infrastructure, I think would be great. And I think Urandati decided to do it all for us. Thanks.
I saw that.
No?
Yeah, that looked like a yes.
I saw like this.
Well, I mean, again, I'm already coming up with some questions for this survey. I could give you something to sort of I could bullet some things out just based on old notes to say, you know, because it's easy to switch a question into a criteria, I think, to say, how are we doing on this? And so I could start us off, but again, I would need you guys to sort of commit to responding on email, or if there's a better, I mean, we're doing a lot of team stuff at the city, you know, kind of that threaded discussion type conversation. I don't know if there's a format that we could do some of that as part of this group. Any collaboration? I mean, I could do just a Google form and invite you all to jump in on that. What do you think? I know what Moises thinks about that, but anybody else in the tech savvy world have a thought on better ways to
working? I'm fine with working if everybody likes working on that, with the understanding that there may be some impediments that I may have it from time to time, but that's okay. Ana Pesi's going to help me through. Thanks.
Excellent. I mean, I'm wide open. If you've seen during this kind of time where if there's other ways to, you know, collaborate more freely rather than clogging up all your emails, I'm happy to do it. I just know that when I send emails. I don't get a ton of response, but I'm sure it's because it's hard to know which ones rise to the top and need need responding to. It's a lot to keep up with. So if
Right, yeah. I think it'd be great. We could look at what other, what basically the general, what is an SRO supposed to do, to see what their objectives are supposed to be about. And then we could maybe tie them into the MTSS, so multi-tiered systems of support. What does that look like at each tier level? And see, do they fit in those tier levels? You know, should they work with tier 1 students, tier 2, and so we could do I think something that brings in law enforcement and education together, and hopefully come up with some decent performance measures for them. And then they could just say, you know what, we don't like them. We didn't like you guys anyway. And so that's it.
Yeah. But the thing that I think is most critical on that I still, you know, for all these weeks we've been working on this, I still don't have a great picture in my mind of what the SR program is really trying to achieve. I've heard a lot of, you know, kind of loose pie in the sky type things, but nothing super concrete, frankly. I mean, the sort of the rapport between the public, you know, between the youth and the student, and generally having an officer who's familiar with the culture of the school, who's responding to issues at the school. Those are the kind of the two broad, but they're not the most like fleshed out or compelling, I guess, when I just outside looking in. So to me,
I don't see it that way,
No.
but so that's why I think we should talk about this.
yeah,
I think they do have it. They just don't know how to put it on paper to be able to assess themselves.
yeah, and maybe that's it. But then maybe that's a gap we can fill, is to
Yes.
really spell it out, to say these are the things that this program needs to be achieving, and
Yes.
are we meeting that and having some additional teeth, or you know, because it does,
Or rewards.
yeah,
Exactly.
rewards, or just, you know, or we have the right people in the right positions, etc. So
Exactly.
okay, we can start that. I will, unless somebody tells me differently, I'm going to do it on Google because that's just where all our information is. And so Moises will do our best to accommodate you. Okay. Wow. I really sped. Oh, the sub to the PD one that I was going to talk about is, we have been talking since the beginning, and I know even before we arrived on the scene, there's been a discussion about having PD at the table, simply because the outcomes of this discussion will ultimately, that's where they land. And if we hope for meaningful and sustainable change that actually changes not just policy but culture, and helps the police officers to understand a bit more what we're trying to go for here, is to have them at the table in some way, shape, or form. Now, I think what I've heard from the commission is, in the past, is that there's some people who are not favorable on having them as members of the commission. The latest proposal kind of coming out is that would it be useful to have a couple of officers attend each of the subcommittee meetings? So, and those that are familiar, I don't know if they'd be SROs or people who administer the SROs, or who they would be. I think the request was to have the most sort of ground level officers, because we already have so many leadership people at the table, the Chief Brown, etc. So what is the feeling in this subcommittee? How would it feel to have a couple of officers who are here with us each week to just not necessarily influence our outcomes, but to give us the context we need to make decisions that will actually change culture, not just delete one word in the policy here and replace it with a different word? My thought on that is to figure out how we actually make cultural and sustainable change. But I put it to you, that's the most recent thought of the officers, is maybe that would be a good way to do it. What do you all think?
Can I just jump in on this? I think that I think it would be good to be able to get the different perspectives, but I think it would have to be individuals who are already aware of this kind of work. Because I've seen in other committees I've been on when other individuals are put in there to offer a different perspective that is not aware of the work that we're trying to do, that most of the time we spend educating that person
Mhm.
on the work that we do. So I'm open to having having that perspective in here, but it would need to be someone who already understands racial equity in policing and what that means, at least a general idea of what that means. And we're all starting from that point, rather than someone who's coming in and asking like, what's the difference between equity and equality, and stuff. I mean, I think all of those things are important, but for the nature of the work that we're doing, we need to have someone who is already kind of on that same.
Agreed. I think we need somebody who builds up and improves our work and does not like take our time to go backwards and explain stuff like that. I agree. And what I believe I heard them proposing is that they've been kind of gathering bios basically for us, for officers. They've been because this has been on the table kind of as a discussion item. So they've been gathering bios, and I think we get to like interview them basically, or we get to choose our own adventure in terms of which officers feel most appropriate. And I think that'll happen at full commission, if I'm understanding correctly, if we agree to this, that they'll put several bios together, say which ones feel best to you and that would help your work, and we get to choose. And the other thing I proposed to that group is the same thing. Like I said, can we have a training with them or a debrief basically before they join the group, so that they know where we're at, they know what work we've done, they know, so we're not having to catch them up in meeting time. That I and maybe Dante would make sure that they're up to speed on racial equity, and that they're up to speed on the work of this committee, and that they're not trying to rob our time getting caught up. Any other opinions on that topic? Because this is kind of the opportunity to speak up. If there's strong opposition or strong proponents, please do share.
Only comment I have is one that I had early on was I wouldn't want to put them in a difficult position of voicing something that may be contrary to the rest of the officers and maybe put them in jeopardy with the rest of their friends, or to put their job at risk. That's my biggest concern, is I wouldn't want to put them in a difficult situation of saying, I have a really strong opinion about this, but I can't say anything because I'll get in trouble with my friends at the union. So
Yeah.
that's my only concern. And I think we discussed that very early on with us before even the facilitators were on board, before we had any of the other commissioners too.
Yeah. And I would really encourage you guys, if you haven't had the opportunity to go and look at those listening session notes that we took in the leadership, we had a small group meeting with the leadership of the PD, and we had a small, like a focus group listening session with the more kind of beat cop group. And if you haven't had a chance to go in and look at those notes, yeah, I mean, they're just conversation notes, but it was really eye-opening to me to see those perspectives. So hopefully we were able to gain some of that safe space type knowledge in that conversation, and then we don't have to put them at risk, but we also can, have, if these people end up being good synergy in this meeting, there's nothing saying that you all can't like have a virtual coffee with them or talk offline and gather information in a non-recorded situation, because that is a fact. It's a thing that they'll have to contend with if they agree to be part of this group.
Yeah. And so that's what we were thinking. That's what I was thinking. Maybe the subcommittee would be a little less dangerous, maybe, because they're not, the chief isn't right there. They could see it right next to, oh, there's Mr. Brady there listening to everything I'm saying. So here may be a little bit easier for them to talk, with the understanding that it is recorded and so forth. But yeah, I would love. There's Arundhati, you're at West, right?
Yeah.
Do you guys still have Amy Novoa as an SRO?
Yeah, I was gonna say, okay, you're absolutely right about the youth advocate name, because I just looked at the Watai directory and they're still listed, so you're right. Or at least there's something that we definitely need to look at. But yeah, she's still our officer, the SRO at our school.
Yeah, I don't know how she's been with your experience with her, but The work that I've done with her, she is outstanding as a female in the police force, a Latina. She's also in the Guard and military intelligence. Go getter, lives in Rose Park. Boy, does she understand the issues of oppression, and is in the force to be able to develop some kind of change. So for me, I could see that person being an ideal if she's willing to be part of this, to bring that voice in, while at the same time understanding what we're trying to do. So just a thought.
Okay, well, maybe we can send that over as kind of see if they want to poke her and ask. But okay, so it doesn't sound like there's big worries about this. Just a few caveats that we want to make sure that this person is that we have buy-off, we have choice on who this person is, that they understand equity, and they're caught up to speed. Luna, it seemed like you wanted to say something.
Yes, I think I probably would be once again one of the lone voices who feels that there is overrepresentation of police in our group in a formal setting. I really do think that we need to make space for affected community members as well. If we are running town halls for them, then there could be a town hall that could be offline with the police officers, but actually giving them seat within the commission on these subcommittees. I already feel that there is representation in many forms and advocates for them as well. I don't find a lot of advocates for people who have faced these issues. So I am a vocal opponent of this suggestion at this moment.
Okay. Sorry, my child's walked in. It's not that I'm not acknowledging you. I'm just trying to stay quiet so he doesn't. In a minute, sweetheart. I'm almost done. Sorry, I tried to keep them quiet with candy and television, but it only lasts so long.
And one other point that I kind of forgot to add was that I may have said this before, but I'm going to repeat that as a community member, I'm not going to call myself a community leader. It puts me in danger to be representing the community and being in cohort with the police when we are trying to understand what are the effects of policing on our communities, and we are trying to advocate for the adverse behavior of the police on our communities. So when visually they see us being in those conversations and the community still getting impacted every single day, it mitigates my position in those communities for them to trust me and to be able to speak freely to me even. And I all of a sudden am not seen as an ally, but seen as somebody who's basically turncoat at this point.
I understand I understand what you're saying, and I'm going to ask you a question because the way I see this being an advantage to this group, and I'm completely willing to be overruled or disagreed with, but is because of that cultural change piece. That it's to me, at least, like one of the tenets of community engagement is those who are affected by a decision need to have a seat at a table where decisions are being made. And so it's not, and I may not understand everything about representation, but if my hope for sustainable change out of this, because we all know, you can put something on paper as much as you want, and policies are policies, but behavior on the street is something different. And so to better understand how we can affect that change most effectively, I feel like you need that inside voice to sort of understand how, where the rubber meets the road, and how can we get there? How can our recommendations most trickle down to every officer in the most effective way? And so to me, I see that as an advantage to us in that way. But again, if you see that differently, I'd really like to understand how you might recommend that we make that sustainable change in a different way. And do you have thoughts about how we affect culture and things like that without that representation?
Absolutely. When we are put here as community people, we are already bringing that experience, right? We have that knowledge, that information, and trust. And for me, I do not need to sit with every individual or every group of police, force to be able to understand their issues I need to also represent my community authentically, right? I understand policies. I'm not coming from a space where I can't read laws and policies and recommend changes. If we have to effect change within the department, that can be done through policy in the way trainings are going to happen, right? We can critique the training modules. We can critique how we can better train and take data back into account to say, what trainings are working and what is not working. But to give them so much space on the table to hear their side, there's an imbalance right now, clearly, in my opinion. How many parents are represented here whose kids have been affected by SROs? Is there one single parent here that can actually talk about what exactly, and I may be making an assumption, Moises. I see
Yeah, my child and
that
me,
the
I've been a victim of a lot of police brutality.
same here. My children have had to suffer through SROs as well. But I'm also trying to balance not to bring just that one side, but also hear the SRO's perspective and everything. And, it's like I feel the space is getting compromised just because having the chief there and, the top of the police there itself is, seen as that we're just trying to comply to everything that the police wants us to do. So, like I said, I am very clear and I've thought through this, and I don't agree.
Okay.
That's amazing how we could see things so separately, huh? Because like I'm saying that we haven't had really police voice here at all, and for me, the police chief doesn't really bring the voice of that culture. It's like saying a superintendent provides a voice of a school district. For me, no, they don't. You talk to teachers, talk to counselors, administrators. They're the ones that know. The maintenance folk, they're the ones that know. And that's the group I really want to hear, because yeah, and when you talk to police, they're mad because they're like, that chief doesn't know what's happening down in the streets, what's really happening down there, and we would like to provide voice. And so that's how I see it. I really feel that I want to learn that culture much better to be able to get their buy-in. And I represent the largest minority group in Salt Lake City. So definitely, I know some people are mad at me for talking with police. I know that. I've lost a lot of Chicanos. They're like, ¿Qué traes, pendejo? What are you talking to those beep peeps, right? But for me, I truly believe that we have to talk to each other. We need to feel what the other culture is saying in order to get their buy-in. Because if we don't get their buy-in, it doesn't matter how many policies we put, they're not going to follow it. Policy does not always change practice. And so that I just want them to see that we're listening, but hey, we still are the ones that are going to provide that recommendation. But I definitely understand what Luna is saying, but I can also understand that too, how you could be seen just as a turncoat too. So
What you said really comes at me, and I absolutely respect that. Perhaps what I also want to add to this conversation is that maybe bringing them on the commission is not the way. And I also do want to understand their perspective. I do want to affect their culture and be part of that conversation. But bringing them on the commission in this method, it just feels a tilt of power to me.
Okay. So just to reiterate, and I'm sure you heard me, but they will not be members of the commission. They will be invited guests who will attend our subcommittee for advisory role only. And I think we within the subcommittee at least would have some say on some ground rules, et cetera, to say, hey, we welcome your perspective, and we also reserve the right to ask you to step away at any point, or if there's meetings at which we want to have a more closed discussion, we reserve the right to ask you to please step aside for those meetings, and etc. So I think some of these concerns may be able to be addressed through some ground rules, though I want you to know that we've heard you, Luna, but it's to me it sounds like the majority of this group is open to the idea, but I would hope that we can come together on some ground rules that leave the commission members in the driver's seat exclusively, that they are here only in an advisory capacity, and to listen and understand and provide context, are not members, are not voting members, and don't have sway over the outcomes. We ultimately decide those outcomes.
I like those ground
Um,
rules. That's a smart idea.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I would change the
So
word advisory role. I mean, it could
what
be
would you say?
feedback role, but not advisory role.
Yeah.
Say the word
I mean,
you
they
said
can't
again,
be
not advisory, but
feedback
what was the other word?
or
Feedback. Okay.
something, like that. Not, I mean, once again, I think it's elevation of their position. Words matter.
Okay. Yes, I agree that words matter. I think that we do not want to, I think we need to come to some agreement in this group of how we frame their participation and frankly, give them the expectations of what we would like from them, because I'm sure they would actually welcome that information to say, well, what am I being asked to bring? What am I not being asked to bring? So if we can frame that for them, I think that will be our very best course of action. And I think, really reserving the right to boot them out too if we don't find their feedback useful, or if it's not elevating our work and it does end up like to Anna Pacey, I think it was you who said, that we don't have to spend time explaining to them what racial equity is, et cetera, that we can just move forward. And if that is not working, then we will go a different way and keep all of our power where it lies now and not shift that. So I'm usually very good about keeping us right at 5 o'clock. I've let us go until 5:08. Anything, so to me, it feels like our next subcommittee meeting, we're going to develop we're going to start talking about these criteria offline on email, and we're going to develop that survey for youth subcommittee offline. But I imagine by the time we come back together, we may want to talk a little more specifically about those criteria and finalize those in person. I'm curious if anybody has any concrete next steps for getting our arms around the administration piece. We do still have the opportunity to do a listening session with them, but have not figured out the very best way to get participation from the right administrators or the right mix of administrators, because I feel like the people who will self-select to be a part of that are likely not the people that are, they won't give us the most diversity of opinions, I guess is the nicest way to say that. So I'm wide open to anyone's ideas on how to recruit for that in a way that will give us a diversity of perspectives.
Which administrators? I'm sorry, I missed
The
that.
school administrators
Oh,
that
school
are
administrators.
over the schools that have SROs. We wanted to have a listening session with them, but as we tried to put it together, we're like, gosh, if we ask for people to self-select, I'm not sure that we will get the mix of people that we want to hear from.
Well, I mean, can't we just invite them all? And there's not that many. It's basically the secondary schools.
Yeah, we can invite them all. I wonder, is there a person, I'm looking at Anna Pacey, maybe, is there a person that invite could come from that it would feel like a thou shalt rather than a, hey, if you have time and interest, show up at this, but something with a little more oomph? Is there somebody that could come from besides me or the city?
You mean somebody from this committee or somebody from the district?
I'm thinking someone from the district is just
Probably have to come from the superintendent.
Yeah,
or
I can just.
somebody wanting them to.
Dante,
Or the board.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, Superintendent Madden, he's very into equal access, equal rights, so he will definitely do that, and then he could probably send it out to the principals, and when the teachers have their secondary staff meetings, that would probably be when you can reach out to them. And that way you'd have all the teachers in one place, like all the teachers at West and all the teachers at East, and you can talk to all of them and see what they feel.
Are we talking teachers or admin?
well,
teachers and admin.
based on my understanding, we wanted to talk to administrators who were referring students to the SROs. But I want to make sure that, that's what this group.
Does that include teachers? Because I know, like, I had my physics teacher refer students to the SROs, like, just directly. So I don't know what the distinction is between admin and teacher.
Well, and maybe we could phrase the invite that way to say anybody who's making referrals. within your school, people who are making referrals to the SRO, whether it be the administrators or if that falls to teachers.
The issue with including teachers, that's gonna be a lot of teachers.
Yeah.
It is.
And the reality is, I'm sorry, Davina, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think definitely contacting the superintendent, but definitely bringing in student services, because Mindy, she does handle, well, her department handles all the referrals that involves with SROs, because that's under her department. So I think involving student services is also, but then that would be a request at the superintendent level.
Okay. Do
Yeah,
you have a
and,
contact
Buendia.
for Mindy? Is that
I do. My office wasn't very far from her when I worked at the
not Dr.
district.
Buendia, is she? I don't know her first name.
Oh,
No, 'cause she's
not,
Sandra or something, right?
Dr. Buendia is with Equity.
Sandra.
Yeah, Sandra.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Sandra Buendia is Mindy's boss.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So if you have a contact for Mindy, please send that along, and I will do my best to get that back on the calendar, because I think that one is going to be it is an important next step to getting our arms around that, the admin and the referral piece, is to get that feedback.
And
And-
the only reason I would recommend admin is because they are the ones that are supposed to do it, them and SROs. It's not supposed to be teachers, even though teachers do it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh.
and the admin can then, I mean, once we have that meeting with the admin, they can refer specific teachers or something like that. But
Okay.
admin would be the way to go, because they're the ones who make those decisions in their schools.
My son figured out how to turn on the television, so I apologize for the background noise. He did that on his own. So, all right, we'll make that a next step between now and then. And I believe we still have a full commission between us and the next subcommittee meeting, if I'm remembering the schedule right. Cindy Lou, are you there? Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. You do have
Okay.
a full commission meeting.
So our next subcommittee is when? What date?
Your next subcommittee is on the 17th,
Thank you.
which I believe that's Ash Wednesday.
Okay.
And we had talked about.
Yeah,
maybe
Kamal had
moving-
asked about whether or not the subcommittees. It was
Shoot.
kind of left to the subcommittees to decide if you didn't want to meet on religious.
I wish she was
Solid.
still here. In my experience with Ash Wednesday, it's typically earlier in the day you would attend something, but if I can reach out to Kamal offline and see if he's going to be big. I suppose he could just select to not come.
I can double check, but I
Alright.
think, damn it.
Mhm.
I think that the Ash Wednesday stuff is online right now.
Oh,
I'll
okay.
double check. But I know a lot of the churches are shut down right now.
That seems logistically challenging with an Ash Wednesday situation on Zoom, but.
But it may be more of a spiritual reason rather than the actual practice itself. So,
Sure.
and I don't know about y'all too.
Okay. And if, so are we okay with keeping it on the calendar for now? I'll reach out to Kamal offline, and if he has any strong opposition, we can look at. I'd hate to miss one. I wonder if we could reschedule within the week if he's got a, or maybe time of day, but I'll check with him because he did express that concern.
Yeah, either that Tuesday or the Thursday after one or the other, something like that.
Yeah, we could look at it shifting with that rather than skipping, because I think we have lots of work to do. All right, well, apologies for facilitating a little 15 minutes late today. I try, but I think this was a valuable time spent and good discussion. So I will let those of you who like to go on to the next meeting, go on to the next meeting. And thank you everybody for being here today. And we'll follow up all these to-dos. We'll follow up offline in the interim between now and our next subcommittee meeting.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
I'm going to tell training that you kept us till 6:30, so I don't have to go to it.
I can take it. Blame it on me. All right, guys.
Hey, thanks everybody.
Thank
Great
you,
chatting with
everyone.
y'all.
Join and share. Take care.
Bye-bye.